So over the weekend, I watched a couple of new movies that came out, and they weirdly had a lot in common with each other. They had the unlikable main character thing going on, and so let's explore the idea of unlikable main characters today. So the two movies I watched were Not Okay with Zoe Dutch and Honor Society with, her name is Ngari Rice, I think is how you say it, or Ngari Rice. Two very different movies, but they had a sort of a strong female protagonist. And one of them, the Not Okay movie, intentionally not a likable character, an unlikable protagonist. Honor Society is the opposite. I think through a series of events became unlikable. So yeah, I don't even know if it's a thing anymore, if people still say you can't have unlikable characters in stories. I disagree with that anyway. I think Breaking Bad is sort of the greatest example of having an unlikable main character. Also The Sopranos, any slasher movie for instance also. So, it's not a deal breaker, but I do think there is more work to be done in sort of character development and story development when you have an unlikable character that you might not have to do otherwise, because you're sort of already a couple points back. The chances of getting turned away from very high compared to a likable character. So when I was doing research, I found some patterns. I'm going to call these maybe hacks or cheats, to hedge your bets if you're going to make an unlikable character. It's not going to fit everything, but first one is have the unlikable character in an ensemble. Instead of having just a main character, have a group, a shared group. That way they sort of fit in well and they interact with the ensemble. The Big Short, Ryan Gosling's character was a jerk. He admits he's not the hero, but he's part of this, and good enough that the rest of the characters are a lot more likable, even Steve Carell's character. Also Little Miss Sunshine, the dad, Greg Kinnear's character, very unlikable, very hard to root for. His save is kind of, once everything goes down, he's on the side of his family, and so he sort of changes his ways. He's the heir of his ways, which is a good way to fix an unlikable character, is to have them over the course of the story, their arc is going to be seeing the error of their ways. It's not every movie, but it's a lot. There's also 10 Things I Hate About You, which is the ultimate sort of unlikable main character in an ensemble, because it's the taming of the shrew. It's Julia Stiles' character is literally the shrew of the story. She's the unlikable person. As you learn more about her and get more context, and she ends up coming clean to her sister near the end, and you really understand why she's so intense and why she's the shrew. She's not unlikable. You didn't have context in order to like her, and now you do. So another angle would be the historic precedent, based on a real person, that kind of thing. Social Network, Mark Zuckerberg, not a likable person. He doesn't really get his comeuppance ever, still, but obviously not a likable person. But we have context, so we have a reason to stay involved. Lord of War, Nick Cage's character is a gun runner, same thing. War Dogs, same thing. Wolf of Wall Street, DiCaprio's character is despicable. And if you've actually seen interviews of the guy, he is legitimately that bad. Does he get his comeuppance? It's hard to say, but he's compelling because it's sort of a where were you when this happened kind of situation. It's also Pain and Gain. I never thought I'd recommend a Michael Bay movie, but yeah, these very unlikable, very despicable characters go through stuff, but yeah, again, they get their comeuppance, and it's a how did we get to here kind of story. Another way to do it, satire or the extremeness of the character, the extremeness of the world, a way to distance, our world from the world that's being told, so you can sort of draw parallels. I'm thinking Thank You for Smoking. All three of those protagonists are really terrible people. Even the reporter in that story is a bad person. Also Up in the Air, George Clooney's character has this framework of being alone and just having status as the most important thing. The foil of Anna Kendrick sort of shining back at him, being like, yeah, family is important. Caring about things is important. And so he sort of makes the journey as he realizes that there are things in his life that he cares about. Another George Clooney movie, Intolerable Cruelty. It's a little bit older. It's about a lawyer without morals who was played by George Clooney, who meets Catherine Zeta-Jones as sort of this woman who, marries rich and then divorces them and ruins them. And he falls in love with her because they both have sort of the same thing that they care about. They care about status. They care about winning. They care about manipulating people. And so you see them sort of getting closer and closer, circling each other. And you kind of root for them because they kind of fit with each other, even though everything about them is yucky. There's also Clueless. I don't know if you can call Clueless a real satire, but if you watch the trailer of Clueless, it's really very much pitched as she is in her own world, and her own world point of view is sort of incompatible with the world she lives in, even in Beverly Hills. And so over the course of the movie, she sort of starts peeling back layers, and you sort of realize that even though she has this framework, she's willing to change in order to, adapt to the world that actually exists. And so there's a really good, her still maintaining her ridiculousness, that is her being sort of a valley girl, but still, she learned a lesson. She's wiser now for it. Traditional character, improving, changing. Another way to do it, being the butt of the joke. Larry David has made an entire career being the butt of the joke. He puts himself in a situation, he makes it worse, he gets consequences, and he deserves everything he gets. And he's kind of mad that he got consequences because he sees himself as the hero. That's tried and true formula. Always Sunny, very similar situation. They're all despicable characters. Dennis is probably the S word you can't say. Yeah, but again, you root for these characters because they go as far as they need to, and then they get their comeuppance. They always, it always comes back. You pull the rubber band's going to snap back. And they're not happy when it snaps back because, again, they see themselves as heroes. So that's a way to do it. I will admit there is sort of a difference between the films that I'm talking about and the TV shows I'm talking about, because in films you only have 90 or 120 minutes to sort of give the audience sort of an entire story of a character, whereas in television you have a lot more time to develop and slowly adjust these characters if you need to. But, whether or not a movie uses these cheats, the big thing is an audience needs to have an understanding of these characters, especially if they're main characters. It's not just what they say they want, but actually what they actually want. There needs to be a clear understanding of that. Because some of the best drawn characters of all time will say something, but it's the opposite. You got to really get in the heads of these characters in order to really appreciate what they're doing. The Hannibal Lecter of it all, the American Psycho of it all, these are really terrible people, but as long as you can get into their point of view and see it from their point of view, you can sort of go along for the ride. Even if what they're doing, you can judge and say it's very bad. So the wants, the needs, and the character's point of view. You got to be close to these characters, and that's how you understand these characters. Is you get as close as you possibly can, so that you're living through their eyes. You're not just seeing them do stuff. So I think both of these movies that I'm talking about, sort of, that's the big issue. It's not any of these sort of gimmicks that they could have done. I especially don't think Not Okay should have been a satire based on, if you've seen the trailer, what it's actually about. Satirizing that would be way worse than just having an unlikable character. I think the real issue with both of these movies are just you're not close enough to the character to really not empathize with them, but go along for the ride, if that makes sense. So let's talk about the first movie, Honor Society. Angourie Rice. I think I said that right. I've watched her say her name a bunch of times. That's my best guess. She's a driven high school student. She's going to go to Harvard. That's her way of getting out of her terrible town, and nobody's going to stop her. And she finds out that the guidance counselor has an in at Harvard, but he might be giving it to one of three other people. And so she realizes that her mission is to ruin the academic careers of these three other people in order to be the only choice left. Because she's a winner. She's going to win. And sure, I'm off to the races. It's kind of Mean Girls. It's a little bit of Clueless, but here we go. And you see she's pretty much all about the manipulation and going to Harvard. She has a couple of girlfriends that are her friends, but they're really just her goons and do stuff for her. And there's a great payoff later where once the other shoe is dropped, they ask her, well, what do we do now? And she goes, go live your lives. And they're confused. Not real friendships. Play for laughs for sure, but obviously those are not real friendships. She doesn't seem to have much of a interior life. Her wants are just Harvard and getting out and manipulating people, I guess, is the third one. And so over the course of the story, she befriends the kid from Stranger Things, who, again, both of these actors just absolutely crush it. But she's making him lose. And she gets feelings briefly, and then things start falling apart for her. That's when things get weird, because she sort of suffers an initial consequence from one of the people she's manipulating in a pretty interesting kind of twisty way. But after that, she's about to go through the gauntlet of all these other things that she's done to people. And instead, people start coming up to her going, thank you, you've changed my life. And she realizes that by manipulating these people, she's actually, helped them. And so she doesn't really learn her lesson, if that makes sense. She kind of just goes, oh my God, my bad behavior was the thing that everybody needed in their lives. I'm the guardian angel kind of person. Kind of a weird takeaway. So again, didn't ruin the movie, but definitely once you think about it, you're like, well, this is a Zach Morris's trash kind of situation. If you've ever seen that on Funny or Die, if you don't, the Cliff Notes is this guy goes through Saved by the Bell episodes and talks about how Zach Morris in every episode pretty much ruins, humiliates, damages people, all for the sake of whatever plan he was going to do. But because it's a squeaky clean sitcom, by the end of the episode, he's back, he's forgiven, everything's forgotten, the consequences don't ever come back to him, and on to the next episode. Zach Morris is trash. So kind of the same thing. She doesn't get quite the comeuppance she was set up to get, even though you kind of learned a lesson, but she kind of didn't. So again, I don't think the solution is any of these cheats. I think, it's not going to work if it's an ensemble or, historic precedent or any of that kind of stuff. I think we just needed more information about her as a person, what her life is, what does she care about? Her dad is in a lot of scenes and she seems to have basically no interaction with him. Her mom also. So yeah, there was a weird distance, I guess, which is kind of leads me into the second movie for very similar reasons, but it's crazy because again, in Honor Society, she's not really an unlikable character. She just, once you think about it, she makes choices that aren't really paid off correctly. The Not Okay movie is the opposite. The first thing we see in Not Okay is letters on the screen that says this protagonist is unlikable. And the movie's kind of like goading you into turning it off, which it's a big swing. I mean, credit where credit's due. You're already have an unlikable protagonist, and then you're calling it out and saying, I dare you to turn the movie off. Bet big, win big, I guess. So let me get into it. So Zoe Dutch, who crushes it in this role, is this sort of doesn't have friends, is pretty unlikable, very selfish, lies to impress a boy that she's going to Paris. And in order to back up the lie, she photoshops herself because she's a photo editor, herself in Paris and posts it. And it happens to coincide with a bad thing that happened in Paris that people now think she's a victim of and a survivor of. And she decides to double down and play into it, goes to the airport, fakes coming back and is a survivor. And all of a sudden she has friends. She has speaking. She's a journalist, all these kind of things. But she's not like she's reaping the benefits, but obviously it's based on a lie. And you don't really see her struggle with the lie aspect of it. She was just enjoying the ride. She ends up befriending a person who actually did suffer from something and is famous for that and is a speaker for that. And they become friends. But again, it's one of those friends based on a lie situations. So the other shoe's going to drop, obviously. And when it does, the internet hates her, as you do. And she's upset because the internet hates her. But, the movie doesn't really, you don't really get close enough to her character, even though you see Zoe Dutch's face for 80-90% of the entire movie. She has no interior life. She wants a boy to like her for a little while and then gives up on that. And then she wants to be famous and popular and liked. And that's kind of it. She has no other obvious desires. She kind of wants to be a journalist, but then she gets it so easily that it's, she's a journalist now. If anything, she just wants it to not end. And so once the consequences happen and she gets found out for her lie, it's a situation where a regular person, this is the moment to grow, to learn from your mistakes, to make amends. There's so much as she ends up going to a group and she admits she doesn't really feel like she's changed, which is not great with a story about an unlikable character, because if they haven't changed, then what's the point of the story to begin with? Although Social Network did it, so I guess that's fair. But yeah, and the suggestion in the moment in that scene was, well, if you don't think you've changed, maybe you should go make amends. And so the final act is her going to make amends, and she goes to meet her friend who is estranged from her now, and she's going to apologize. And her friend does this whole speech, and she realizes it's about her, and she realizes she can't apologize to this person. I think the idea is if she had apologized, she would have made it about her. And so she's grown by having not made it about her and just being anonymous. But is that growth? Is going to go apologize and then changing your mind growth? And the answer is, I don't think so, but not because it's not. It's because we don't know enough about her. Would that have been growth? Would that have been the thing that changed her for the better. We don't know. So again, I just like the first one, I don't think any of these hacks would have helped. Ensemble, again, the satire thing based on the context of the thing that she survived, making that a satire would have been a really bad idea for the movie, I feel like. So I think it's just, understanding character, wants, needs, closeness. She makes a choice to Photoshop herself, and then anything after that has been a reaction. She really didn't do anything. And the moment she was supposed to, where she went to the auditorium to go see her friend, she chose to do nothing. Does that count as a choice? So, yeah, I don't know. All is to say, very entertaining movies, both of them. Honor Society, super fun. I enjoyed it. The retrospective of it all made me dislike the main character a little bit more, and that's why I'm considering her an unlikable protagonist. Zoe Dutch's character in Not Okay, from the beginning, built as an unlikable protagonist. And sure, but then you have the responsibility as a filmmaker to, fix that. Either have them become likable by learning a lesson, or, go in the Always Sunny direction and having the consequences really be consequences, and her unable to cope with the consequences because she thinks she's the hero of the story. Because, yeah. So, unlikable characters are hard. And I think the real trick is honestly workshopping it. Writers groups, if you're in a show, writer's room, more eyes on the pages. You gotta iron out the bumps, just because it's a harder way to write. It's just like any other gimmick or bit, I guess. I don't know what you would call it. Affectation. If it's anything other than a very straightforward story, you got to make sure you do the work in order to make the story work. And I just feel like both of these, especially Not Okay, not there, not quite. And I think a little bit more working on the script would have fixed that. So the other thing to note is, the Not Okay movie seems a lot like a Diablo Cody movie, which is to say Diablo Cody, I feel like she's made a career for writing unlikable female protagonists. And sure, and I like most of the Diablo Cody stuff. I think it's a little weird that, coincidence being what it is, her most successful movies tend to have likable protagonists and not unlikable ones. But, she's still doing it and she's still making movies. So, power to you. Yeah, unlikable characters. That's my take. I don't know. So it's a great challenge, but you got to respect the challenge, but you gotta still make it work as a movie first. And then you got to also have the unlikable character work also. So yeah, that's what I got. See you next time.